So before we dive into how I prepare for my manifestations or how I prepare for my desires to come, there's something very subtle but very important to understand when it comes to manifestation. And it's that your thoughts, your emotions, and your actions are all part of the physical world. Because all manifestation boils down to is that your internal world will be reflected on your external world. So knowing that our thoughts, emotions, and actions are part of the physical, our thoughts, our electrical signals, our emotions, our chemical signals to our body, and our actions, are reflections of those. But our thoughts, emotions, and actions are creations. They don't create. What creates is your internal world, and your identity is how you shape that internal world. So rather than trying to force yourself to feel a certain emotion, or think positive thoughts, or work really hard to make your dreams come true, take a step back and notice who you're being. So for example, we can take someone, and we all know someone like this probably, someone who has a victim mindset. No matter what they do, no matter what they say, no matter whatever, there's always something against them. The world's against them, it's not their fault, this and that. And maybe they are working really hard, thinking really positive, and all of those things to try and get out of their situation. As long as they maintain that victim identity, even if they escape whatever situation they're in or overcome it, another situation or place or thing is going to come to take its place to confirm or reflect back to them their victim identity. As long as they show up in the world that way, the world is going to reflect that back. Now, how this works when you're manifesting your desires is a little bit different, because if you've been holding on to or identifying as a certain thing for long enough, it feels like that's who you are. But who you are is your imagination, who you are is divinity, and who you are is whole and complete already. Any identity you can think of already exists within the core of your true being. And you can pick any identity that you want. You can choose to be a victim, you can choose to be someone who's inspired, and no matter what identity you choose, that's how you're going to show up in the world. So how this looks in my own life is, recently I bought a kettlebell, and I've worked out in the past, and I was never consistent. I never had that identity. I thought I needed to just push and work hard, and my fitness goals would happen then. But I never stuck with it because my identity wasn't going to reflect what I wanted. So now that I've made this identity shift, I've never missed a workout, even though half the time, and this is another reason why identity is so important, which I'll get to in a second, because half the time I don't even feel like working out. I feel weak and tired and slow, and it's one of the last things I want to do. And this is why identity is important, because I'm not hyping myself up, thinking positive around working out, or trying to boost myself and get inspired around it. I don't, and I don't try to force those things, but my identity carries me through it anyway. And another way this looks is I took 2 months off from making videos, and if you look at those videos took me about 6 hours to make. And, they weren't that good. I don't know if these ones are much better, but, it takes me an hour to make these versus 6 hours to make those last ones. And it's all because of a shift in identity. I'm showing up differently, so I'm expressing myself differently. Things in my world move differently. Not because I'm thinking positive about making videos, not because I've said a bunch of affirmations to make the process smoother. I've just had a shift in identity, and, now the process is smoother. I don't have to fight or struggle against it, or try to hype myself up or anything like that. My identity just carries me through the process. Now, moving on, it can be a lot easier said than done sometimes to move into your desired state of being or your desired identity, especially if you've been in a certain one for so long it just feels like that's who you are. But all you need to do is just remind yourself of who you are, of who you desire to be. So let's take the victim identity again, for example. Let's say they want to move on. Now they've moved on, that's it. But maybe something will trigger them, they'll see something or hear something, and it'll take them back into that old victim state. All they would need to do is just notice where they are in identity or in consciousness, and if it's not where they would like to be, celebrate, and then just remind themselves of who they are. Just step back and really what this boils down to is just being present in the moment. Because if you're slipped out of your old state and now all of a sudden you're worried about the future, thinking about the past, you're going to get lost in this 3D world, this illusion, whatever you want to call it. This person would get lost there and then feel they would have to struggle and fight and fix things before they can move into their new identity. But all they would need to do is just be present in the moment, remind themselves of who they are, and then, the shift would happen naturally. And the more you do this, the more natural it becomes. And the reason you celebrate when you've noticed you've slipped out of your desired state of being is simply because then it'll bring more celebration into your life. The more you celebrate, the more reasons you're going to have to celebrate. You don't have to do that, but it's just an extra little bonus thing you can do for this whole process. So in short, skip thoughts, emotions, and actions as your mode of manifestation, because they're only creations. They don't create. They're reflections of your internal state. And change your internal state, your identity, the actions, thoughts, and emotions will follow that. They'll dictate how you show up in the world, because our thoughts, emotions, and actions are part of the physical. And if you've noticed you've slipped out, notice it, celebrate, and remind yourself of who you are. This might seem really basic, there's not a lot of tricks to this, it's just, you choosing who you desire to be, and, who you are dictates how you show up dictates what you experience. Now, that's all for this video. Thank you for watching. If you have any questions or gained any insights or just want to say anything, let me know in the comments. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video.